The $100 million defense AI was 23 hours from deadline when it crashed for the ninth time. CEO Alyssa Carter stood alone in the server room at 2 a.m., watching her company's future dissolve into lines of broken code. Every engineer had failed. Every backup plan had burned. And in the hallway outside, a janitor named Ethan Cole was about to rewrite everything she thought she knew about genius, power, and what it means to be invisible. Like and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story reaches. The fluorescent lights and Titan Core technologies buzzed with the particular frequency that came just before failure. Alyssa Carter had heard that sound before. 3 years ago when the cooling system died and took 40 servers with it. 2 years ago during the ransomware attack that nearly bankrupted them. And now, at 2:47 a.m. on a Thursday, that felt like the end of everything. She pressed her palm against the glass wall of the server room and watched the diagnostic screens paint themselves red. Failure. Failure. Critical error. Failure. 30 years old. CEO of a defense contractor worth $340 million on paper, and completely, utterly screwed. "Run it again," she said. Marcus Webb, her lead systems architect, didn't move from his workstation. His eyes had that hollow look of someone who'd been awake for 36 hours straight and knew it didn't matter anymore. "Alyssa, we've run it 17 times. The core algorithm is fundamentally broken." "Then fix it." "We can't." Marcus pulled off his glasses and rubbed his face. "I've had 8 people on this for 3 days. The math doesn't work. It never worked. We sold the Pentagon a system we can't deliver." The other engineers in the room weren't even pretending to code anymore. Sarah Chen sat with her head in her hands. Tom Rodriguez was staring at nothing. Rachel Park had tears running down her face, though she probably didn't know it yet. Alyssa's phone buzzed. Another text from General Hawthorne. "Status update. Oi." She turned the phone face down without responding. What was she supposed to say? "Sorry, General, but the AI system that's supposed to predict insurgent attacks and save American lives is currently predicting that 2 + 2 = fish? How bad is the presentation tomorrow?" she asked quietly. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "We're demonstrating a $100 million defense contract to Pentagon brass and a committee that includes people who've wanted to shut us down for years. And we have a system that can't successfully identify a threat pattern if you painted it neon and added flashing arrows. So we're done." "Yeah, we're done." Alyssa looked around at her team. These weren't mediocre engineers. Sarah had a PhD from MIT. Tom had built autonomous systems for 3 different governments. Rachel had turned down Google twice to work here. And they'd all failed together, thoroughly and completely. The company would survive the financial hit, probably. They had other contracts, other projects. But this was supposed to be the big one. The contract that moved them from regional player to national force. The one that proved Alyssa Carter wasn't just another tech CEO writing her father's legacy. She'd started Titan Core 3 years after his death, built it from his abandoned patents and her own borrowed money. She'd wanted to prove something. To the board members who'd patted her head at her father's funeral and told her she should think about consulting. To the venture capitalists who'd asked if she had a technical co-founder they could actually talk to. To herself, mostly. "Go home," she said. "Get some sleep." "What about the demo?" Sarah asked. "I'll think of something." They left slowly, gathering laptops and coffee cups, avoiding eye contact. The door sealed with a soft hiss of pressurized air, and then Alyssa was alone with the blinking red lights of her expensive failure. She sat down at Marcus's abandoned workstation and pulled up the algorithm. Lines and lines of elegant code that added up to nothing. Months of work, millions of dollars. And somewhere in there, hidden like a fracture in a load-bearing wall, was the flaw that killed everything. Her father would have found it in an hour. Robert Carter could read code like other people read novels, seeing patterns and connections that remained invisible to everyone else. He'd had a gift. Alyssa had a business degree and very good instincts for hiring people smarter than herself. Not good enough, apparently. She was 40 pages into the source code when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, irregular, someone pushing a cleaning cart. She'd forgotten about the night crew. The building didn't stop needing maintenance just because the company was imploding. The footsteps paused outside the server room. Then the door opened. "Sorry," the janitor said. "Didn't know anyone was still here." Alyssa glanced up. tall guy, early 30s, wearing the gray uniform of Apex Cleaning Services. Dark hair that needed cutting. The kind of tired in his eyes that came from years, not hours. "It's fine," she said. "I'm just—" She gestured vaguely at the screens. "Working." He started to back out, then stopped. His eyes had caught on one of the diagnostic displays. Alyssa watched him read it, his gaze moving across the error logs with unexpected speed. "Bad night?" he asked. "Bad month. Bad year, maybe." He nodded like he understood, which was impossible. Then he looked at her directly for the first time. "That's a neural network architecture, right? For pattern recognition?" Alyssa blinked. "How do you know that?" "I used to—" Shh. He stopped, shook his head. "Never mind. Sorry. I'll come back later." "Wait." She stood up. "Used to what?" The janitor hesitated, hand still on his cart. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd first thought. Maybe 32, 33. There was something in his face that looked like intelligence, that had been buried but not quite killed. "I used to study this stuff," he said finally. "Long time ago. Different life." "Study where?" "Stanford. For about a year and a half." His smile was brief and didn't reach his eyes. "Then my wife got sick, and I had a daughter to feed, and student loans don't pause for tragedy. So now I clean offices. It's honest work." Alyssa's brain made connections quickly. It was the one thing she was genuinely good at. Stanford. Neural networks. A year and a half was enough to go deep, but not enough to finish. And the way he'd read that error log, not like someone who dabbled, but like someone who'd lived in that world. "Look at this," she said, pulling up the core algorithm. "Tell me what you see." "I really should, please." He approached slowly, eyes on the screen. She stepped aside to give him space. For a long moment, he just read, scrolling through code with one hand while the other tapped against his leg in an unconscious rhythm. "It's a cascade classifier," he said. "Multiple stages, each one filtering for more specific threat patterns. Should work in theory." "In theory, it's brilliant. In practice, it crashes every time we run real-world data." He scrolled further. "Who wrote the weight distribution algorithm?" "Marcus Webb. He's our lead architect." "He's very good. The structure is elegant." Ethan, she glanced at his name tag, Ethan Cole, leaned closer to the screen. "But there's a problem in the third layer. You're using a fixed learning rate across all nodes. We tested that. It works. For synthetic data, yeah, but real-world threat patterns aren't evenly distributed. You need adaptive weighting. Otherwise, the network overtunes on common patterns and misses edge cases entirely." Alyssa felt something shift in her chest. "Show me." "I don't think—" "Please, show me." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Then he set his cleaning supplies aside and sat down at the workstation. His fingers moved across the keyboard with the kind of muscle memory that doesn't fade, even after years away. He opened a new file, started writing. Alyssa watched over his shoulder as code appeared on the screen. It was different from Marcus's work. Less elegant, maybe, but more organic, like it had been grown instead of designed. "The key is dynamic node weighting based on pattern rarity," Ethan said, still typing. "Common patterns get normal processing. Rare patterns trigger increased sensitivity in subsequent layers. You're basically teaching the network to pay attention when something feels wrong, even if it can't articulate why yet. That's not how neural networks work. That's not how we were taught to build them. Doesn't mean it's the only way." He finished typing and ran a quick syntax check. "This is just a rough draft. Needs optimization. But the core concept is solid." Alyssa stared at the screen. 47 lines of code that looked nothing like anything her team had tried. "Test it. I'm a janitor. I don't have access to—" She reached past him and entered her admin credentials. "Test it. Now, Bishsien." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he complied. He pulled up their testing framework, integrated his new code, and ran the diagnostics. The screen flickered. "Loading. Processing. Green." Alyssa's breath caught. "Run it again." He did. Green, green, green. That's one test," she said. "Try it on the full data set, the one that's been crashing us." Ethan's hands were shaking slightly now. He loaded the complete dataset, 3,000 real-world scenarios pulled from declassified intelligence reports. The system processed them in 22 seconds. 93% accuracy, 0 crashes. "Oh my God," Alyssa whispered. Ethan sat back, staring at the screen like he couldn't quite believe what he'd just done. "It's not perfect. The accuracy rate should be higher. And there are edge cases where my entire team has been working on this for 3 months," Alyssa said. "You just fixed it in 10 minutes. I got lucky. I saw a pattern they missed because I wasn't invested in the existing architecture. Fresh eyes, that's all." "That's not all." She pulled over a chair and sat down next to him. "Where did you learn to code like that?" "Taught myself in high school. Got a scholarship to Stanford. Started in their AI research program under Professor Chen. This was back when machine learning was still kind of niche. I was working on adaptive systems, trying to build neural networks that could evolve their own learning strategies instead of relying on human-defined parameters." He smiled faintly. "Thought I was going to change the world. What happened?" "My wife was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 2 months into my second year. I took a leave of absence to care for her. She died 6 months later. By then I had a 3-year-old daughter, $200,000 in medical debt, and no degree. So I got a job that let me work nights while my daughter slept, and I've been cleaning offices ever since." Alyssa felt something crack in her chest. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. My daughter's healthy and happy. I see her every morning before school and every evening when she gets home. That's more than a lot of fathers can say." He looked at the screen again. "But yeah, I miss this, the work, the problems, the feeling that your brain is doing what it was built to do." "What's your daughter's name?" "Lily. She's 8 now, wants to be a marine biologist." His voice softened when he talked about her. "I bought her a fish tank last year. She names all the fish after famous scientists. Currently has a guppy named Marie Curie and a betta fish named Jane Goodall. She sounds amazing. She is. Smarter than I ever was, and kinder than I could have hoped for. She's the reason I get up every morning." He stood up. "I should really finish my route. I've already spent too much time here." "Wait." Alyssa stood too. "How much do they pay you at the cleaning company?" Ethan frowned. "Why?" "Because I want to hire you, not as a janitor, as an engineer." "No. I can pay you 3 times what you're making now. 4 times. Name your price. I don't have a degree, I don't have references, and I haven't written production code in 8 years." He gestured at the screen. "This was a fluke. A lucky guess. It doesn't make me qualified to work at a defense contractor." "You just did what my entire engineering team couldn't do. I'd say that makes you qualified. For one problem. What happens when the next crisis hits and I can't solve it? What happens when your board finds out you hired a janitor with no credentials? I handle the board. You handle the engineering." Ethan shook his head. "You don't understand. I have a daughter who depends on me. I can't afford to take risks. The cleaning job pays my bills. It's stable. And if I screw this up, if I fail at something this public, I'll never get hired anywhere again. I'll be the guy who got fired from a defense contractor for incompetence. You won't fail." "You don't know that. And I know you just saved my company. I know you see things my best engineers miss. And I know that right now you're the only person who can help me deliver this system tomorrow." Ethan's face was tight. "Tomorrow? We're demonstrating this to the Pentagon at 2 p.m. If it fails, we lose the contract. If we lose the contract, the company takes a hit that might kill us. And if the company dies, 200 people lose their jobs." She paused. "I know it's not fair to put that on you, but I'm desperate, and you're brilliant, and I'm asking for help." He closed his eyes. "I can't." "Why not?" "Because I've been invisible for 8 years. Safe. Anonymous. Just a guy who cleans offices and goes home to his daughter. And what you're asking me to do, stepping into a boardroom, defending my work to Pentagon generals, that's not invisible. That's putting a target on my back. That's risking everything I've built for Lily on the chance that maybe, possibly, I'm as good as I used to be. You are. Better, probably. You don't know me. I know your code." Alyssa pulled up his algorithm again. "This isn't the work of someone who's lost their edge. This is the work of someone who's been thinking about these problems for 8 years without the distraction of needing to be right in front of colleagues. You've been free to actually think. Ethan opened his eyes, looked at the screen, looked at her. If I say yes, he said slowly, I need conditions. Name them, man. My daughter comes first, always. I pick her up from school at 3:30 every day. I'm home for dinner at 6. No exceptions. I don't care if the building's on fire. Done. I work under an alias. Not my real name, not until I'm sure this is going to work. Alyssa hesitated. The board will need to know who you are eventually. Eventually? Not immediately. I need time to prove myself before people start digging into my background and finding out I'm a janitor pretending to be an engineer. You're not pretending. You are an engineer. Not on paper. Not in any way that matters to people who care about credentials. His voice hardened. I've spent 8 years being told I'm not good enough because I don't have the right degrees or the right experience. I'm not going through that again unless I know I can win. But Tradi Yamatats. Alyssa thought about it. It was risky. The board would be furious if they found out she'd hired someone under false pretenses. But she was already gambling the company on a demo tomorrow. What was one more risk? Okay, she said. Alias. Until you're ready. And if this goes badly, if the demo fails, if the system crashes, if it turns out I'm not as good as you think, you let me disappear back into the cleaning crew. No drama, no public humiliation, just a quiet exit. It won't fail. If it does, fine. If it does, you walk away quietly. She held out her hand. Deal? Ethan looked at her hand like it might bite him. Then slowly, he reached out and shook it. Deal. They spent the next 18 hours rebuilding the system from the ground up. Alyssa brought in Marcus first at 4:30 a.m. He arrived rumpled and suspicious, clutching coffee like it might save his life. Please tell me you have a miracle, he said. Better. I have a consultant. She gestured at Ethan, who was already deep in the code. This is Nathan Cross. He's a specialist in adaptive neural networks. He's agreed to help us fix the algorithm. Marcus looked at Ethan. Ethan nodded, not looking up from the screen. Never heard of you, Marcus said. I keep a low profile, Ethan replied. Mostly work private contracts. Where'd you study? Stanford. But like I said, I keep a low profile. Can we focus on the code? Marcus frowned but sat down at an adjacent workstation. Show me what you've got. Ethan walked him through the dynamic weighting system. Marcus listened, his frown deepening, then slowly shifting into something like wonder. That's actually elegant, Marcus said. Why didn't we think of that? Because you were too close to the problem. Sometimes you need someone who hasn't been staring at it for 3 months. They brought in Sarah next, then Tom, then Rachel. Each time, Alyssa introduced Ethan as Nathan Cross, an outside consultant. Each time there were questions. Where did you come from? Who do you work for? Why haven't we heard of you? And each time, Ethan deflected smoothly and redirected to the work. By 7 a.m., the full team was assembled and the system was taking shape. Ethan directed them like a conductor leading an orchestra, assigning tasks, reviewing code, catching errors before they propagated. He had a gift for seeing how pieces fit together, for understanding not just what each component did, but how it would interact with everything else. Alyssa watched from the corner of the server room and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. He's good, Marcus said, appearing beside her with fresh coffee. Really good. Where'd you find him? Mutual friend? Alyssa lied. He was available on short notice. Lucky. Because honestly, without him, we'd be screwed. At noon, they ran their first full system test. The algorithm processed 5,000 scenarios in under a minute with 97% accuracy, no crashes, no errors. Holy shit, Tom breathed. It actually works. Run it again, Ethan said. Different data set. They ran it 6 more times with 6 different data sets pulled from various intelligence sources. Each time, the accuracy hovered between 95 and 98%. The system was learning, adapting, getting better with each test. This is incredible, Sarah said. How did you... the math is so simple when you look at it, but nobody thought to ask. Sometimes the simple answer is the right one, Ethan said. He was tired. Alyssa could see it in the set of his shoulders, the way he blinked too often, but there was something alive in his face that hadn't been there at 2 a.m. Okay, let's stress test it. They threw edge cases at the system. Bizarre scenarios. They hugged. Incomplete data. Contradictory information. The AI handled it all, flagging uncertainties, requesting additional information when needed, but never crashing. At 1 p.m., Alyssa called a halt. "We're as ready as we're going to be," she said. "Everyone go get cleaned up. We present in an hour." The team scattered. Ethan started to follow them, then paused. I don't have anything to wear. I'm still in my cleaning uniform." Alyssa looked at him. Looked at the gray polyester shirt with Apex Cleaning embroidered on the chest. Yeah, that wouldn't work. "Tom," she called. "You keep a spare suit here, right?" Two, actually. Bad habit from my consulting days." Tom appeared in the doorway. "Why?" "Nathan needs to borrow one. You guys are about the same size." Tom shrugged. "Sure, it's in my office. Help yourself." 20 minutes later, Ethan emerged from the bathroom in a charcoal suit that fit well enough. He looked uncomfortable, tugging at the collar. "I feel like I'm wearing a costume," he muttered. "You look professional. That's what matters." Alyssa checked her watch. "Pentagon team arrives in 30 minutes. You ready?" "No, but I'm here." "Good enough." They gathered in the main conference room, the one with the big windows overlooking the city, the polished table that cost more than a car, the presentation system that had cost more than 5 cars. Alyssa had always hated this room. It felt like a stage designed to impress rather than to work. Today, it needed to impress. General William Hawthorne arrived exactly on time, flanked by 2 Pentagon analysts and a congressional aide who looked about 12 years old. The general was 60-something, with iron gray hair and the kind of posture that came from 40 years of military discipline. "Ms. Carter," he said, shaking her hand, "I hope you have good news." "Better than good, General. We're ready to show you a working system." "Glad to hear it. After 3 months of delays, I was starting to wonder if this contract was a mistake." Alyssa smiled tightly. "Not a mistake, just complex. Please, have a seat." They settled around the table. Alyssa stood at the head, pulling up the presentation on the main screen. Ethan sat off to the side, ostensibly as technical support, actually as the only person who fully understood what they'd built. "Gentlemen," Alyssa began, "what you're about to see is a next-generation threat assessment system designed specifically for asymmetric warfare environments. It processes intelligence from multiple sources simultaneously and identifies patterns that human analysts might miss." She clicked through the technical specs, the system architecture, through the training methodology. The Pentagon team listened politely but skeptically. They'd heard pitches before. "Let's see a live demonstration," General Hawthorne said. Alyssa nodded at Marcus, who pulled up the testing interface. "We'll feed the system real-world intelligence data from the past 6 months in the Middle East. Raw information, satellite imagery, communications intercepts, human intelligence reports. The AI will process it and identify potential threats." She hit enter. The system came alive. Data streams populated the screen, thousands of individual pieces of information flowing through the neural network, being categorized, weighted, connected. Patterns emerged. The AI flagged 3 potential insurgent safe houses, 2 weapons smuggling routes, and 1 coordinated attack plan that human analysts had missed entirely. Processing time, 43 seconds. The room was silent. "Run it again," General Hawthorne said quietly. "Different data set." They ran it 4 more times. Each time, the system performed flawlessly, identifying threats with speed and accuracy that made Marcus's hand shake as he operated the controls. One of the Pentagon analysts leaned forward. "How is it doing this? The pattern recognition is beyond anything I've seen from systems twice this size." "Adaptive learning," Ethan said before he could stop himself. All eyes turned to him. He cleared his throat. "Sorry, I'm Nathan Cross. I designed the core algorithm." The system uses dynamic node weighting that adjusts based on pattern rarity. Essentially, it learns to pay attention to anomalies the way human analysts do, not through rules, but through intuition. Intuition in an AI? The analyst looked skeptical. Not really intuition. More like statistical pattern recognition that mimics intuitive processes. The network identifies when something feels wrong, even if it can't immediately articulate why, then increases processing power in those areas until it can define the threat. And that's safe? We can't have an AI flagging false positives that waste military resources. The accuracy rate is 97% on current tests, and the system includes confidence scores for every assessment. If it's not sure, it tells you. Ethan pulled up a sample report. See? High confidence threats are marked red. Medium confidence is yellow. Anything below 60% confidence is flagged for human review. General Hawthorne studied the screen. Show me the insurgent attack plan it identified, the one human analysts missed. Marcus pulled up the relevant data. The system had connected 3 seemingly unrelated pieces of information: a pattern of phone calls, unusual traffic around a government building, and the purchase of specific chemicals, and concluded that an attack was being planned. This intelligence is 2 months old, the general said. Did the attack happen? Yes, sir, the congressional aide said, checking his tablet. Car bomb outside a courthouse in Kabul, 17 casualties. We had the raw intelligence but didn't connect the pieces until after the fact. The general's face went hard. Your system would have caught it. According to the simulation, yes, Alyssa said, with 4 days warning. Silence again. But this time it felt different, heavier. I want to test it on current intelligence, General Hawthorne said. Not simulations, live data. Alyssa's heart jumped. Sir, we'd need security clearance for Gishio. You have it, as of now. Colonel Barnes will escort you to a secure facility where you can connect this system to our live intelligence feeds. If it performs as well on current data as it did on historical scenarios, you have your contract. When? Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. The general stood. Ms. Carter, if this system is everything you claim, it could save lives. A lot of lives. Don't disappoint me. He left, taking his entourage with him. The door closed behind them. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Marcus let out a whoop that probably violated several noise ordinances. We did it! Sarah threw her arms around Tom. We actually did it, yeah. Rachel was crying again, but this time from relief. The team erupted into celebration, hugging each other, laughing, the tension of 3 months bleeding out in a rush of pure joy. Alyssa found Ethan in the corner, looking at the floor. Hey, she said. You okay? Yeah, just... He rubbed his face. That was intense. You were brilliant. The way you explained the algorithm, the confidence scores, the general loved it. I talked too much. I wasn't supposed to be the lead on this. You were perfect. She lowered her voice. Thank you for everything. I know this wasn't easy for you. Ethan looked at her, and for the first time, she saw something in his eyes that looked like belief. I need to go. I have to pick up Lily from school. Of course, we'll debrief tomorrow morning before the general's test. Right. Tomorrow. He started to leave, then turned back. Alyssa, what you said earlier about people losing their jobs if we failed. Did you mean that? What was she? Every word. Then I'm glad we didn't fail. He left. Alyssa watched him go, this janitor turned engineer who'd saved her company in a single night, and wondered what the hell she was going to tell the board when they inevitably found out the truth. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, they'd won. For now, that was enough. Ethan made it to Willow Creek Elementary with 4 minutes to spare. The borrowed suit jacket hung on the passenger seat, replaced by his usual hoodie and jeans. He changed in a gas station bathroom, stuffing Tom's expensive clothes into a grocery bag like evidence from a crime scene. The school bell rang. Kids poured out of the main doors in a chaos of backpacks and shouting. Ethan spotted Lily immediately. Dark braids bouncing, glasses sliding down her nose, deep in conversation with another girl about something that required elaborate hand gestures. Dad! She ran over and crashed into him with the full force of 8 years old. "You're here!" "Of course I'm here. When am I not here?" "What?" "Mrs. Patterson's dad forgot her yesterday. She had to wait in the office for like an hour." Lily adjusted her backpack. "Can we stop at the library? I need a book about octopuses for my report." "Octopi." Actually, both are correct, but octopuses is more scientifically accurate because it's an English word, not Latin. She grinned up at him. "Ms. Chen told us today. Your teacher's showing off. She's smart, like you." Aye. Ethan's chest tightened. "Come on, let's get that book before the library closes." They drove to the public library in his 15-year-old Honda, Lily chattering about her day, who said what at lunch, the impossible math homework, the terrifying rumor that next week's spelling test would have 20 words instead of 15. Normal things. Safe things. The library was nearly empty. Lily disappeared into the children's section while Ethan stood by the front desk, watching her run her fingers along book spines with the kind of focus she usually reserved for her fish tank. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "This is Alyssa. Saved your contact from the security logs. Need you at the office by 7 a.m. tomorrow. General wants the test run early. Hope that's okay." Ethan typed back. "I pick up Lily at 3:30. No exceptions. Understood. See you at 7. He pocketed the phone and tried to ignore the feeling in his stomach. It wasn't quite fear, and wasn't quite excitement, something in between, like standing on the edge of a cliff and not being sure if you were about to fall or fly. "Dad, look!" Lily appeared with 3 books. "They have a whole section on marine biology. Can I get all of them?" "Library card max is out at 5. Go find 2 more. Boom." She darted off again. Ethan watched her go and thought about tomorrow. Thought about walking into a secure Pentagon facility and running his code against live intelligence data. Thought about what would happen if it failed. If someone discovered he was a janitor playing dress-up. If the whole fragile structure came crashing down around him. But mostly he thought about Lily, and how she looked at him like he could do anything. He wasn't sure he wanted to be the one who taught her that wasn't true. Alyssa was already at the office when Ethan arrived at 6:47 a.m., wearing yesterday's clothes and drinking coffee that smelled like it could strip paint. "You sleep at all?" he asked. 3 hours. "You?" "About the same." He set down his bag. "Lily thinks I'm working construction. Told her I got hired for a big project that pays really well but requires early mornings." "She believe you?" "She's 8. She believes I'm basically a superhero who can also make really good pancakes." He pulled up a chair. "What's the plan for today?" Alyssa walked him through it. They'd meet the general at Fort McAllister, a secure facility 40 minutes outside the city. The Pentagon had set up an isolated server environment connected to live intelligence feeds from 3 active conflict zones. They'd run the AI against current data. No historical scenarios, no safety nets. "How much data?" Ethan asked. "Everything. Satellite imagery, signals intelligence, human reports, financial tracking. 30 terabytes updated in real time. And we have how long to process it?" "General wants preliminary threat assessments within an hour. Full analysis by end of day." Ethan did the math in his head. 30 terabytes was enormous. The system could handle it theoretically, but they'd only tested it on controlled datasets. Real-world intelligence was messier, incomplete, contradictory, deliberately obscured by hostile actors. "What if it crashes?" he said. "Then we're done." The general was very clear. "This is the final test." Alyssa sat across from him. "But it won't crash. I've seen what you built. It's solid. I built it in 18 hours with a team I'd just met, and it worked perfectly. Stop second-guessing yourself." Marcus arrived at 7, then Sarah and Tom. They loaded the system onto encrypted drives and triple-checked every line of code. Rachel ran diagnostic after diagnostic, searching for vulnerabilities. Everything came back clean. At 7:45, they piled into 2 cars and headed for Fort McAllister. The facility looked like every military installation Ethan had seen in movies. Chain-link fences, guard towers, humorless soldiers checking IDs at multiple checkpoints. They were escorted to a bunker-like building at the center of the complex and led down 3 flights of stairs into a room that could have doubled as a nuclear command center. General Hawthorne was waiting with his team, along with two new faces, a woman in a Navy uniform and a man in a suit who had CIA written all over him, all over. "Ms. Carter," the general said. "Right on time. This is Admiral Chen, Naval Intelligence, and Director Walsh from the agency. They'll be observing today's test." Alyssa shook hands while Ethan hung back, trying to look unremarkable. It didn't work. Admiral Chen's eyes found him immediately. "You're the algorithm designer," she said. It wasn't a question. "Nathan Cross, ma'am." "Yes." "Stanford grad?" "Yes, ma'am." "Strange. I don't see you in our contractor database. No published papers, no conference presentations, no previous government work." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Almost like you appeared out of nowhere." Ethan felt sweat prickle at his collar. "I prefer to let my work speak for itself." "We'll see if it's worth listening to." The technical team got them set up at workstations arranged in a semicircle around a massive display wall. The main screen showed a world map dotted with active intelligence feeds. Thousands of data points updating constantly. "Your system will have access to everything you see here," General Hawthorne said, "plus classified feeds that won't be visible to you directly. We've isolated this test environment to prevent contamination, but the data is live and current. Whatever your AI finds, we'll verify against human analyst reports." "Understood," Alyssa said. "How do we begin?" "Initialize your system. Let's see what it can do." Marcus and Sarah worked the technical setup while Ethan watched the data streams. There was a rhythm to intelligence, patterns within patterns, signals hidden in noise. He'd studied this at Stanford, back when it was theoretical and clean. Seeing it in real time, knowing that every data point represented actual human lives in actual danger, made his hands shake. "System initialized," Marcus announced. "Running preliminary data ingestion." The AI came alive on the screens. Ethan watched his algorithm work, neural pathways lighting up as the system processed incoming information. It was strange seeing it deployed at this scale, like watching a child you'd built suddenly grow up and start making decisions on its own. The first threat assessment appeared after 6 minutes. "Possible weapons shipment detected," the system reported. "Northern Syria. Confidence, 73%. Flag for human review." Admiral Chen checked her tablet. "We have that shipment flagged already. Known quantity. What else?" The AI continued processing. More assessments appeared, some matching existing intelligence, some new. The Pentagon team cross-referenced each one, nodding or making notes. 18 minutes in, the system flagged something different. Anomalous financial pattern detected. Multiple small transactions from dispersed sources converging on a single account in Beirut. Pattern consistent with coordinated funding for large-scale operation. Confidence, 89%. Director Walsh leaned forward. "Show me the transaction data." The screen populated with financial records, hundreds of small transfers, none large enough to trigger automatic monitoring, but collectively forming a clear pattern. The AI had connected them based on timing, source distribution, and historical patterns from known terrorist financing operations. "We don't have this flagged," Walsh said slowly. "How did your system identify it?" "The algorithm looks for statistical anomalies in transaction timing," Ethan said. "These transfers are spaced at intervals that appear random, but actually follow a subtle pattern. 7 to 11 days between transactions, amounts varying but clustering around specific values. It's not something human analysts would catch without specifically looking for it. Can you predict the next transaction?" Ethan pulled up the pattern analysis. "Based on the current sequence, next transfer should occur within 48 hours. Amount between $2,000 and $4,000. Most likely source is one of these 3 accounts." He highlighted them on the screen. Walsh made a phone call, spoke quietly for 2 minutes, hung up and looked at General Hawthorne. "If that prediction is accurate, we need this system operational immediately." "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Admiral Chen said. "It's found one new pattern. Let's see what else it can do." They ran the system for 3 more hours. It identified 27 potential threats, including 3 that had been missed by human analysts and 2 that were still being investigated. The accuracy rate held steady at 96%. At noon, General Hawthorne called a break. "Impressive work, Miss Carter," he said. Your system performs exactly as advertised, better in some cases. Thank you, General. However, he turned to Ethan, I have concerns about Mr. Cross. Alyssa's face went carefully blank. Concerns? Admiral Chen is correct. He has no presence in our contractor databases, no published research, no verifiable work history in the defense sector. The general's eyes were sharp. That makes me nervous. In this business, people who appear from nowhere often have reasons for staying hidden. Nathan's background has been vetted, Alyssa said, which was technically true. She'd vetted it herself at 2 a.m. in a server room. He's a private consultant who values discretion. I'm sure he does. But before we move forward with this contract, I need a full security clearance on everyone involved. That includes Mr. Cross. The general looked at Ethan. You'll submit to a background check. Financial records, employment history, references, standard procedure. Ethan's stomach dropped. Of course, General. Good. We'll have the paperwork sent over this week. Hawthorne checked his watch. We'll continue testing this afternoon. I want to see how the system handles real-time crisis scenarios. They broke for lunch. The Pentagon team went to the cafeteria. Alyssa pulled Ethan aside into an empty conference room. Security clearance, she said. That's a problem, say it. You think? Ethan paced the small room. They're going to find out I've spent the last 8 years cleaning offices. They're going to ask why I lied about my credentials. And then they're going to pull the contract and probably charge me with fraud. We knew this could happen. Knowing and experiencing are different things. He stopped pacing. I need to withdraw. Tell them Nathan Cross had a family emergency and had to leave the project. Bring in someone else to maintain the system. There is no one else. You built this. You're the only one who fully understands how it works. Then you're screwed, because I can't pass a security clearance under a fake name. Alyssa was quiet for a moment. What if you didn't use a fake name? What? What if we come clean? Tell them the truth. That you're Ethan Cole, former Stanford student who left to care for your family. That you've been working outside the industry but maintained your skills. That I hired you in an emergency and you proved yourself. They'll never accept that. They might. The system works. The code is brilliant. And you just impressed 3 of the most skeptical people in military intelligence. She moved closer. Ethan, they care about results. Give them a reason to overlook the unconventional hiring, and they will. What reason? The same reason I hired you. You're the best person for this job. He wanted to believe her. Wanted to believe that competence mattered more than credentials, that the work spoke for itself. But he'd spent 8 years learning that wasn't how the world operated. People cared about pedigree and paperwork. They cared about who you'd worked for and where you'd gone to school. They didn't care that you could write code that saved lives if you couldn't prove you belonged in the room. I have to pick up Lily at 3:30, he said. I know. If this goes wrong, if they dig into my background and find out I've been lying, I lose more than this job. I lose the respect of my daughter. She thinks I'm doing something important, something that matters. You are doing something important. As a fraud, as someone pretending to be qualified. He met Alyssa's eyes. She's going to find out eventually that her dad is just a janitor who got lucky once. You're not a janitor. You're an engineer who had to take a different path for a while. There's no shame in that. Tell that to the Pentagon. Alyssa's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. They're ready to resume testing. What do you want to do? Ethan thought about Lily waiting at school pickup. Thought about her fish tank and her books about octopuses. Thought about the way she looked at him like he could solve any problem. Maybe it was time to actually try. Let's finish the test, he said. After that, I'll figure out the clearance thing. They returned to the command center. The afternoon session was more intense. The Pentagon team fed the system active crisis scenarios, watching how it responded to rapidly changing situations. A hostage situation in Somalia, suspicious troop movements near a contested border, possible chemical weapons development in an underground facility. The AI processed everything, adapting its assessments as new information arrived. It wasn't perfect. There were false positives, moments of uncertainty, but it was faster and more thorough than any human analyst team could be. At 3 p.m., Ethan stood up. I need to leave. General Hawthorne looked at him. We're in the middle of a simulation. I know, but I have a prior commitment. Marcus can handle the technical support from here. This is a national security matter, Mr. Cross. And I have a daughter who needs to be picked up from school. Marcus knows the system. He can answer any questions. Ethan gathered his things. I'm sorry, General, but this was part of my terms. I don't work past 3:30. The room went silent. Admiral Chen looked like she'd just watched someone slap the general across the face. Director Walsh's expression was unreadable. General Hawthorne stood slowly. You're walking out of a Pentagon briefing to pick up your child from school. Yes, sir. That's either incredibly dedicated parenting or incredibly poor judgment. Probably both. Ethan headed for the door, then paused. The system will keep running without me. Marcus has full access, and I'll be back tomorrow morning at 7 if you need additional support. He left before anyone could respond. The drive to Willow Creek Elementary took 32 minutes. He made it with 3 minutes to spare, still wearing the borrowed suit, heart hammering like he'd just robbed a bank. Lily emerged with her class, saw him, and waved. Everything else, the Pentagon, the general's expression, the security clearance hanging over his head, faded to background noise. Hey, Dad, guess what? What? I got 100 on my math test. Mrs. Patterson said I was the only one who got the bonus question right. She climbed into the car. It was about prime numbers, super easy. That's great, sweetheart. Boys. Also, Emily invited me to her birthday party on Saturday. Can I go? It's at the roller rink. Sure, we'll get her a present this week. They drove home to their apartment, 2 bedrooms on the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better decades. Lily did homework at the kitchen table while Ethan made dinner, spaghetti with jarred sauce. Not fancy, but it was her favorite. Dad? Lily said, not looking up from her worksheet. Yeah? Are you okay? You seem worried. Ethan paused, spatula in hand. Just thinking about work. Is the construction job hard? He thought about how to answer. Thought about the lie he'd told her, the truth underneath it, the complicated space between. It's challenging, but I like it. Gets my brain working in ways it hasn't in a while. That's good. You're really smart. You should do smart people work. You think I'm smart? Obviously. You help me with homework and you always know the answers. Plus you remember like everything about fish even though you're not a marine biologist. She erased something, rewrote it. When I grow up, I want to be smart like you. Ethan's throat tightened. You're already smarter than me, Lil. Can't be. You're the dad. Dads are supposed to be smarter. Where'd you get that idea, sir? I don't know. Just seems right. She finished the worksheet and looked up. Is dinner almost ready? I'm starving. They ate together, Lily talking about roller skating techniques and whether dolphins could understand human language. After dinner, they played cards, Go Fish, which Lily won decisively, and then it was bath time and book time and the whole ritual of putting an 8-year-old to bed. Night, Dad, she said, already half asleep. Night, sweetheart. Love you. Love you too. He closed her door and stood in the hallway, listening to her breathe. This was what mattered. Not the Pentagon, not the contract, not proving himself to people who'd already decided he wasn't good enough. Just this. Just her. His phone buzzed. Text from Alyssa. General approved the contract, pending security clearances. We need to talk about next steps. Ethan replied, tomorrow, after pickup. He sat on the couch in the dark apartment and tried to figure out what he was going to do. Coming clean meant risking everything, the job, the respect, the fragile belief that maybe he could be more than what he'd become. But continuing the lie meant living in constant fear of discovery, building a career on a foundation that could crumble at any moment. Neither option felt right. His phone rang. Alyssa. Thought you said tomorrow, he answered. Couldn't wait. Ethan, we have a problem. Another one? Director Walsh wants to meet with you, privately, tomorrow afternoon. Her voice was tight. He said he has questions about your background that need to be addressed before the security clearance process begins. He knows. I don't think so, but he's suspicious. CIA types are always suspicious. What do I tell him? The truth, maybe. I don't know. She sighed. I'm sorry. I pushed you into this. If you want out, I'll understand. Ethan looked around his apartment. The peeling wallpaper, the secondhand furniture, the fish tank glowing in Lily's room. This was his life. Small, safe, invisible. And he'd been okay with that, until he wasn't. What time's the meeting? He asked. 2 p.m. at his office downtown. I'll be there. Ethan. I'm tired of being invisible, Alyssa. I'm tired of pretending I'm less than I am because it's safer. Maybe it's time people saw what I can actually do. Even if it means they see everything else too? Especially then. He hung up and sat in the dark, thinking about tomorrow. About walking into a CIA office and defending his existence to a man trained to find lies. About the possibility that this could all explode in spectacular fashion, but also about the system he'd built, the lives it might save, the proof that he wasn't just a janitor who'd given up. He was an engineer who'd been waiting for his chance. Tomorrow, he'd find out if that chance was real or just another thing he'd convinced himself to believe. Outside, the city lights flickered through the window. Ethan closed his eyes and tried to imagine what success looked like. Tried to picture a version of himself that didn't flinch when people asked what he did for a living. He couldn't quite see it yet, but for the first time in 8 years, he thought it might exist. Director Walsh's office occupied the 23rd floor of a building that looked deliberately unremarkable from the street. Gray concrete, tinted windows, the kind of place designed to blend into the downtown skyline and be forgotten. Ethan stood in the lobby at 1:55 p.m., wearing Tom's suit again, wondering if this was what it felt like to walk voluntarily into an interrogation. The elevator ride took 47 seconds. He counted. A receptionist who looked like she could break him in half without spilling her coffee led him down a hallway lined with photographs of people shaking hands with presidents. Walsh's office was at the end. Door open. The man himself standing by the window looking at the city below. Mr. Cross, Walsh said without turning around. Thank you for coming. Didn't realize I had a choice. You always have a choice. That's what makes this interesting. Walsh finally turned. He was younger than Ethan expected, maybe 45, with the kind of face that revealed nothing. Please, sit. Ethan sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than 3 months of his rent. Walsh settled behind his desk, opening a thin folder. I'll be direct, Walsh said. Your background doesn't exist. Excuse me? Nathan Cross. Born where? Educated where? Employed by whom for the past decade? Walsh tapped the folder. I had my people run a deep background check. No tax records under that name in any state. No professional licenses, no published work, no social media presence, no credit history. He looked up. You're a ghost. Ethan's mouth was dry. I value my privacy. Privacy is having an unlisted number. This is erasure. Walsh leaned back. So let me ask you directly. Who are you really? The question hung in the air. Ethan could feel his pulse in his throat. He thought about lying, spinning some story about witness protection or classified work. But Walsh was CIA. He'd heard every lie ever invented and probably invented a few himself. My name is Ethan Cole, he said quietly. I'm 32 years old. I studied AI at Stanford for a year and a half before I had to drop out. I've spent the last 8 years working for Apex Cleaning Services as a night janitor. I have a daughter named Lily. And until 5 days ago, I was completely invisible. Walsh's expression didn't change. Why the fake name? Because Alyssa needed an engineer and I needed people to take me seriously. Nobody hires a janitor to fix a $100 million defense contract. But you did fix it. Yeah, I did. How? Ethan met his eyes. Because I never stopped thinking like an engineer. I've spent 8 years cleaning offices and tech buildings, listening to engineers talk about their problems, reading white papers they left on their desks, teaching myself new languages and frameworks after my daughter went to bed. I didn't have the money for school or the credentials for a job, but I had time and I had a brain that wouldn't shut up. So I kept learning. Why? Because it's who I am. You can take away my degree, my career, my future, but you can't take away the way my mind works. I see patterns. I solve problems. That doesn't stop just because I'm holding a mop instead of a keyboard. Walsh was quiet for a moment. Ms. Carter must have been desperate to hire you. Anjaquan. She was. The system was failing. Her team couldn't fix it, and I happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right solution. Ethan leaned forward. But here's the thing, Director Walsh. It worked. The algorithm I built in 18 hours outperformed systems that took teams of credentialed engineers months to develop. Not because I'm smarter than them, I'm probably not, but because I saw the problem differently. And you think that justifies the deception? But no, I think it justifies the hire. The deception was about getting through the door. The work speaks for itself. Walsh opened the folder and pulled out a photograph. Ethan's heart sank when he saw it. Himself in his Apex cleaning uniform, pushing a cart through Titan Core's lobby. The timestamp read 2:31 a.m. 4 days ago. This is you, Walsh said. 6 hours before you supposedly arrived as a consultant. Our security footage review found dozens of images. You've been cleaning that building 3 nights a week for 5 years. Yes. Did Ms. Carter know? Not at first. She hired me before she understood who I was. By the time she found out, the system was already working. So she's complicit in the fraud. It's at the yes, puevas. There's no fraud. I built the system. I wrote the code. Everything I told you about my technical background is true. I just left out the part where I spent the last 8 years cleaning toilets. Walsh closed the folder. Mr. Cole, I could end your career right now. One phone call to General Hawthorne and you're done. Titan Core loses the contract. Ms. Carter loses her credibility, and you go back to pushing a mop. Is that what you want? Walsh, man? Of course not. Then tell me why I shouldn't make that call. Ethan took a breath. Because 3 days ago, your system flagged a financial pattern your analysts missed. And if my algorithm is right, there's going to be another transaction in the next 48 hours that confirms a major funding operation for a hostile group. You could shut me down on principle and feel good about protecting institutional credibility. Or you could let me keep working and maybe save some lives. Your choice. Yes. You're asking me to overlook a significant security concern because you wrote good code. I'm asking you to care more about results than credentials. The code works. The system performs. And if you pull me out now, you're gambling that someone else can maintain it without understanding the core architecture. Marcus is brilliant, but he didn't build this. I did. And right now, I'm the only person who fully understands how it thinks. Walsh stood and walked back to the window. The silence stretched out, heavy and suffocating. Ethan counted his heartbeats. 23, 24. My daughter is 8 years old, Walsh said finally. Smart kid, wants to be a doctor. I work 80-hour weeks so she can go to good schools, live in a safe neighborhood, have opportunities I never had. He turned. I understand doing whatever it takes for your child, but I also understand that institutions have rules for reasons. If I let you slide because your code works, what message does that send? That credentials don't matter? That anyone can lie their way into classified work? No. It sends the message that competence matters more than pedigree. That what you can do is more important than where you went to school. You really believe that? I have to. Otherwise, the last 8 years of my life were a complete waste. Walsh studied him with eyes that had interrogated terrorists and dictators. Ethan didn't look away. Here's what's going to happen, Walsh said. You're going to submit to the most thorough background check you've ever experienced. Financial records, personal history, references from people who've known you for years. We're going to verify every single thing you've told me. And if we find one lie, one embellishment, one exaggeration, you're done. Clear? Clear, second. Second, you work under your real name from now on, Ethan Cole, not Nathan Cross. You explain to anyone who asks that you were brought in under emergency circumstances and proved yourself through results. No more hiding. Okay. Third, you get yourself a real security clearance. That means classes, tests, interviews. You'll do it on your own time, and you'll pass on the first try. No excuses. Understood. Walsh returned to his desk. The financial pattern your system flagged? The one predicting another transaction? Yeah? It happened this morning. $4,000, exactly as your algorithm predicted. Source account was one of the three you identified. He pulled up something on his computer. We've been tracking this cell for 6 months with no progress. Your system cracked it in 3 hours. Ethan felt something loosen in his chest. So it works. It works. Walsh closed his laptop. Which is the only reason you're still sitting in that chair. Your code just prevented a potential attack that could have killed dozens of people. That buys you a chance to prove you belong here. Don't waste it. I won't. One more thing, Miss Carter. Did she know you were a janitor when she hired you? Society to, yeah. Ethan hesitated. The truth could destroy Alyssa's career, but he'd just promised no more lies. She found out about 30 seconds after I offered to help. By then, the solution was already working. She made a judgment call to keep me on the project. Ya como que se pasalan. That was reckless. That was desperate, and it paid off. Barely. Walsh stood. Tell Miss Carter I want to see her tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. And Mr. Cole, next time you want to save the world, try doing it with your real name. Makes the paperwork easier. He shall. Ethan left the building feeling like he'd just survived a car crash. His hands shook as he got into his car. He sat in the parking garage for 10 minutes, just breathing, before he could trust himself to drive. His phone rang. Alyssa. Well? She said. He knows everything. I told him everything, and somehow I still have a job. What? How? The financial prediction came through, exactly as the algorithm said. Walsh thinks the system is valuable enough to overlook the unconventional hiring. Ethan started the car. But we both have to submit to full background checks, and I have to work under my real name from now on. Ethan Cole. Yeah, no more Nathan Cross, no more hiding. He pulled out of the garage. He wants to see you tomorrow morning. I'll be there. Pause. You okay? I don't know yet. Ask me in a week. He drove to Willow Creek Elementary, arriving 20 minutes early. Sat in the parking lot and watched kids play on the playground during recess. Lily was easy to spot, climbing on the monkey bars with 2 other girls, laughing at something, completely unaware that her father's entire life had almost imploded 2 hours ago. The bell rang. Kids lined up. Lily emerged with her backpack, scanning the parking lot until she found his car. She waved and ran over. You're early, she said, climbing in. Meeting finished sooner than I thought. Can we get ice cream? Emily said there's a new place with 27 flavors. Sure, ice cream sounds good. They went to the shop, a cheerful place with bright colors and music that was slightly too loud. Lily got mint chocolate chip. Ethan got coffee and tried not to think about Director Walsh's expression when he'd said, "You're a ghost." Dad, you're doing it again, Lily said. Doing what? The worried face. You keep staring at your ice cream like it said something mean. Ethan forced a smile. Sorry, sweetheart. Just thinking. About work? Yeah. Is it going okay? The construction job? He looked at his daughter, 8 years old, brilliant and kind, trusting him completely, and he made a decision. Lil, I need to tell you something. The job isn't construction. I've been working as an engineer, designing computer systems for a tech company. Her eyes went wide. Really? That's so cool. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wasn't sure it would work out. I didn't want to get your hopes up and then have to explain why I was back to cleaning offices. But it did work out. So far. But it's complicated. I'm doing work I'm not technically qualified for, and some people aren't happy about that. Lily frowned, processing this. But you're good at it, right? I think so. The code works. The system does what it's supposed to. Then who cares if you're qualified? You can do the job. That should be enough. It's not always that simple. Why not? Ethan struggled for an answer that would make sense to an 8-year-old. Because adults care a lot about rules, about doing things the right way, and I kind of skipped some steps to get this job. Did you lie? I used a different name at first, and I didn't tell them I'd been working as a janitor. That's not the same as lying. That's just not telling them things that would make them judge you for dumb reasons. Lily ate more ice cream. Emily's mom is a lawyer now, but she used to work at a grocery store. Nobody cares about that because she's good at being a lawyer. Same thing. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't usually ask me about adult stuff. She grinned. So, are you going to keep the engineering job? I hope so, if they'll let me. They will. You're the best at everything. I'm really not. You are, to me. They finished their ice cream and drove home. Ethan helped Lily with homework, long division, which she found boring but completed with ruthless efficiency. Then dinner, then the evening routine, then bed. After she was asleep, Ethan sat at his kitchen table with his laptop and pulled up the security clearance application. 40 pages of questions about every aspect of his life. Employment history, financial records, personal references, foreign contacts. They wanted to know everything. He started filling it out. Real name, real address, real employment history, including 8 years at Apex Cleaning Services. It felt like undressing in public. His phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. Heard Walsh cleared you. Congrats. Also heard you're actually named Ethan Cole and you've been cleaning our building for 5 years. That's the most insane thing I've ever heard. Beer tomorrow night? Ethan typed back. Can't. Have to pick up my daughter at 3:30, but lunch works if you're free. Deal. I have about 1,000,000 questions. Another text, this one from Sarah. Marcus told us, I don't know whether to be impressed or terrified, leaning toward impressed. The code you wrote is still the best thing I've seen all year. Then Tom. Dude, you're a legend. Also, I want my suit back. Ethan smiled despite himself. He'd expected judgment, maybe anger at being deceived. Instead, he got acceptance, maybe even respect. The next morning, he arrived at Titan Core at 7 and walked through the front door like he belonged there. No cleaning uniform, no hiding, just himself. Marcus met him in the lobby. So, Ethan Cole. Yeah, the janitor who saved our asses. Former janitor, current engineer apparently. Current genius from what I can tell. Marcus handed him a coffee. Come on, we've got a system to optimize. And I have a theory about the node waiting that I want to run past you. Juries. They spent the morning deep in code, refining algorithms, testing edge cases. It felt right, natural, like Ethan's brain was finally doing what it was designed to do. At noon, Alyssa emerged from her office looking exhausted. Walsh just left. That was 3 hours of the most intense questioning I've ever experienced. He clear you? Ethan asked. Provisionally, pending my own background check and a formal review by the board. She sat down heavily. He also suggested, strongly, that I implement better vetting procedures for emergency hires in the future. Fair. He called you a liability and an asset in the same sentence. I'm not sure if that's a compliment or a warning. Probably both. Marcus looked between them. So what happens now? Ethan stays on the project? If he passes the security clearance, yes. We're restructuring his role as lead systems architect, reporting directly to me. Salary commensurate with his actual contribution, not his credentials. Alyssa pulled up a document, which brings me to my next point. Ethan, I'm offering you $160,000 a year, full benefits, stock options. You interested? Ethan's brain stuttered. $160,000. He currently made $32,000 cleaning offices. Yes. Yeah, definitely interested. Good, because the Pentagon wants the system fully operational within 2 months, and you're the only person who can make that happen. She stood. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go explain to my board of directors why I hired a janitor to run a classified defense project. Wish me luck. She left. Marcus turned to Ethan with a grin. $160,000. Not bad for a guy who was mopping floors last week. I still can't believe this is real. Believe it. You earned it. Marcus pulled up a new set of diagnostics. Now let's make sure this system is bulletproof, because if it fails after all this, we're both screwed. They worked through lunch, through the afternoon, testing and retesting every component. The system held. No crashes, no failures, just clean, Efficient code doing exactly what it was designed to do. At 3 p.m., Ethan saved his work and stood up. I need to go. Daughter pickup, Marcus said. Yeah, I remember. See you tomorrow? 7 a.m. Ethan drove to Willow Creek Elementary with the windows down and music playing. He felt lighter somehow, like a weight he'd been carrying for 8 years had finally lifted. Lily was waiting by the flagpole, talking to a teacher. She saw him and waved. Dad, guess what? Mrs. Patterson wants me to enter the science fair. She said my ocean ecosystem project was the best she's seen in 5 years. Shh. Wait. That's amazing, Lil. Can we go to the library? I need books about coral reefs and symbiotic relationships. Absolutely. They drove to the library, and Ethan watched his daughter disappear into the stacks with single-minded determination. His phone buzzed. Text from Alyssa. Board approved your hire. Congratulations, Mr. Cole. You're officially an engineer again. He read the message 3 times, making sure it was real. Then he put his phone away and went to help Lily find books about coral reefs. That evening, after dinner and homework and the bedtime routine, Lily looked up at him from her pillow. Dad, I'm proud of you. For what? For being brave. For doing the engineering job even though people said you weren't qualified. That takes guts. Where'd you learn about guts? Bu baş seçmen. Ms. Chen. She says courage isn't not being scared, it's being scared and doing it anyway. Your teacher's pretty smart. I know. That's why I listened to her. Lily yawned. I'm glad you're not cleaning offices anymore. You seem happier. I am happier. Good. You deserve to be happy. She fell asleep mid-sentence, the way kids do. Ethan sat on the edge of her bed for a while, just watching her breathe. Then he went to his own room and pulled up the security clearance application. He'd finished most of it, but there were still sections that made him uncomfortable. Questions about why he'd left Stanford. Questions about his late wife's medical debts. Questions that required him to expose every failure, every compromise, every moment of weakness. He filled them out anyway, all of it, the truth, complete and unvarnished. When he submitted the application at 11:47 p.m., he felt raw, exposed, but also free. No more hiding, no more pretending to be less than he was. For better or worse, the world would see Ethan Cole clearly now. The janitor who became an engineer, the single father who never stopped learning, the guy who fixed a $100 million contract with code written at 2 a.m. in a borrowed suit. He didn't know if that story would be enough, if people would accept him despite his unconventional path, if the security clearance would come through, or if some bureaucrat would decide his past disqualified him from his future. But at least the story was true. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The security clearance took 3 weeks to process. 3 weeks of interviews with federal agents who asked questions about everything from his childhood friends to his coffee preferences. 3 weeks of wondering if some minor inconsistency would torpedo everything he'd built. 3 weeks of arriving at Titan Core at 7 a.m. and leaving at 3:15 p.m., working on the system while waiting for someone to decide if he was trustworthy enough to keep doing it. On a Tuesday morning in late September, the email arrived. Subject line, Security Clearance Status Update. Ethan stared at it for 5 minutes before opening it. Mr. Cole, your application for secret-level security clearance has been approved, effective immediately. You are authorized to access classified materials relevant to Project Sentinel under the supervision of your designated security officer. He read it 3 times. Then he walked to Alyssa's office and showed her the screen. Congratulations, she said. You're official. I'm official. How does it feel? Terrifying. Like I just signed something I can't take back. You did. Welcome to the club. She gestured at the chair across from her desk. Sit. We need to talk about what happens next. Ethan sat. Through the window behind Alyssa, he could see the city spreading out in all directions. Somewhere down there, Lily was in third period math, probably correcting her teacher's calculations. The Pentagon wants to expand the system, Alyssa said. Not just threat assessment anymore. They want predictive modeling for troop deployments, resource allocation, strategic planning. Basically, they want your algorithm to run half their operational intelligence. That's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of money. We're talking about a contract extension worth $300 million over 5 years. Titan Core becomes a major defense contractor. We hire more people, expand facilities, maybe even go public. She leaned back. And you become the technical lead for all of it. I've been an engineer for 3 weeks. And in those 3 weeks, you've built something the Pentagon thinks is worth $300 million. Experience is overrated. Results are what matter. Ethan thought about that. 3 weeks ago, he'd been cleaning this office. Now he was being offered the chance to lead a project that could define the next decade of his career. What's the catch? He asked. The catch is that success makes you visible. Right now, you're a small story. Former janitor makes good. Interesting, maybe even inspiring. But if this expands the way the Pentagon wants, you'll be testifying before congressional committees. You'll have your face in defense journals. You'll be the guy who built the system that changed how the military thinks about intelligence. She met his eyes. You won't be able to hide anymore. Not from anyone. I'm not sure I want to hide. Then you're braver than I thought. Because visibility means scrutiny. People will dig into your background. They'll question why you left Stanford. They'll write articles about whether credentials matter. Some will call you a genius. Others will call you a fraud. And you'll have to stand in front of cameras and defend yourself either way. Sounds awful. And say, it is awful. It's also the price of doing something that matters. Alyssa pulled up a document on her screen. The board wants an answer by Friday. Expand the project, or keep it contained to the original contract. I told them I'd talk to you first. Why? You're the CEO. It's your decision. Because you're the one who has to live with the consequences. If we expand and it fails, it's your code that gets blamed. If we expand and it succeeds, it's your life that gets turned inside out. She turned the screen toward him. So I'm asking, what do you want to do? Ethan looked at the proposal. $300 million, 5 years, a team of 20 engineers under his direction. The chance to build something that could actually save lives on a scale he'd never imagined. Can I think about it? He asked. You have until Friday. He left her office and went back to his workstation. Marcus was there, debugging a subroutine with the kind of intense focus that meant he'd been at it for hours. You okay? Marcus asked without looking up. You have that look. What look? The one where you're trying to solve a problem that doesn't have a right answer. Marcus saved his work and swiveled to face him. Let me guess. Pentagon wants more. Alyssa's asking if you're up for it, and you're wondering if you're about to ruin your life. How'd you know? Oh, because I've been there. Different circumstances, same question. My first big project, I was 26 and terrified. Spent a week convinced I was going to fail and destroy my career before it even started. He smiled. Obviously didn't happen, but the fear was real. What made you decide to do it anyway, Shab? Honestly, I realized I'd regret saying no more than I'd regret trying and failing. The fear of never knowing if I could do it was worse than the fear of screwing up. Ooh, Marcus pulled up the system diagnostics. Look at this. 98% accuracy on the latest test runs. 0 crashes in 48 hours of continuous operation. You built that from scratch in less than a month. If you can do that, you can handle whatever the Pentagon throws at you. Unless I can't. Then you fail, and you learn, and you build something better next time. That's how this works. Ethan watched the diagnostics scroll past. Green lights everywhere. The system humming along like it had always existed, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Did you know I was a janitor? He asked. Not until you told us. But it makes sense in retrospect. You see problems differently than the rest of us. Like you're not carrying the same assumptions about how things are supposed to work. Is that good or bad? It's different. And in this business, different is usually either worthless or invaluable. You got lucky. You're the second one. Marcus stood up. I'm getting coffee. Want some? Yeah, thanks. Marcus left. Ethan sat alone with the humming servers and the blinking lights and the weight of a decision he didn't feel qualified to make. His phone buzzed. Text from Lily. Dad, can you help me with science fair project tonight? Need to build a model of coral reef. Also, Marie Curie the guppy died. Don't tell me until I get home I want to have a funeral. He typed back. Of course. I'll pick up supplies after school. Sorry about Marie Curie. The afternoon passed in a blur of code reviews and system tests. At 3 p.m., Ethan left to pick up Lily, stopping at a craft store for foam board and paint and tiny plastic coral pieces. When Lily got in the car, her eyes were red. You told me not to tell you, Ethan said gently. I know, but I knew anyway. She was swimming funny this morning. Lily buckled her seatbelt. Can we bury her as a backyard? We don't have a backyard. We have a third-floor apartment. Then the park? The park doesn't allow burials. That's dumb. Where are fish supposed to go when they die? Most people flush them. Lily looked horrified. That's so disrespectful. Marie Curie was a scientist. She deserves better. They ended up burying the guppy in a small box in a planter on their balcony, Lily saying a few words about how Marie Curie had been a good fish who never bit the other fish and always ate her food without complaining. Ethan stood quietly, letting his daughter grieve in her own way. After dinner, they worked on the coral reef model. Lily directed while Ethan glued, creating an ecosystem of foam and paint that was probably more scientifically accurate than it needed to be for a third-grade science fair. Dad? Lily said, carefully positioning a plastic sea turtle. Are you happy with your job? Yeah, I think so. Why? You seem stressed. You keep checking your phone and spacing out. Just thinking about a big decision I have to make. What kind of decision? Whether to take on more responsibility at work. It would mean more money, but also more pressure. More chances for things to go wrong. Lily considered this while painting a piece of coral bright orange. What happens if you say no? I keep doing what I'm doing now, which is good. Safe. What happens if you say yes? I lead a much bigger project, build a much bigger system, and probably spend a lot of time worrying about whether I'm good enough to pull it off. But you are good enough. You already proved that. This would be different, bigger, more public. So? Lily looked at him directly. You're always telling me to try new things, even if they're scary, like when I didn't want to try out for the school play because I thought I'd mess up. You got the part of narrator and did great, because you told me I'd regret not trying more than I'd regret trying and failing. She went back to her painting. Same thing applies to dads. Ethan smiled. When did you get so wise? I've been wise. You just don't usually listen. They finished the coral reef around 9 p.m. It looked good, scientifically accurate, visually interesting, structurally sound. Lily was already planning her presentation, talking about symbiotic relationships and ocean acidification with the confidence of someone who'd read way too many marine biology books. After she was asleep, Ethan sat on the balcony next to Marie Curie's tiny grave and thought about the decision. He could play it safe, stick with the current contract, maintain the system he'd already built. Or he could take the leap, expand the project, risk everything on the chance that he was actually as good as people seemed to think. His phone rang. Alyssa, sorry for calling late, she said. Just wanted to make sure you're okay, and you seemed shaken earlier. I'm fine, just processing. For what it's worth, I think you should do it. Take the expansion, lead the project. Why? Because you're the only person I trust to build it right. Marcus is brilliant, Sarah's meticulous, Tom's creative. But you see things they don't. You think about how systems work in the real world, not just in theory. And right now, the Pentagon needs someone who understands that the difference between theory and reality is where people die. Ethan watched the city lights flicker. What if I screw it up? Then we fix it, together. That's how teams work. I've never led a team before. You led one 3 weeks ago. 18 hours, 0 sleep, $100 million contract on the line. And you didn't just lead, you inspired. I watched Marcus and Sarah follow your direction without question because they could see you knew what you were doing. I was terrified the entire time. Leadership isn't about not being scared, it's about being scared and making good decisions anyway. She paused. Talk to Lily, see what she thinks. Kids have a way of cutting through the bullshit and getting to what matters. Already did. She basically told me to stop being a coward. Smart kid. Terrifyingly smart. I'm pretty sure she's going to be running the country by the time she's 30. Alyssa laughed. Better her than most of the people currently doing it. Think about the expansion. Let me know Friday. She hung up. Ethan sat in the dark and thought about fear. She hung up. Ethan sat in. About how he'd spent 8 years being afraid. Afraid of failing, afraid of trying, afraid of being seen as inadequate, and how that fear had kept him safe but also kept him small. Maybe it was time to be big. The next morning, he arrived at Titan Core at 6:45 a.m. Alyssa was already there, looking like she hadn't slept. I'll do it, Ethan said. The expansion. I'm in. She smiled. Good. Board meeting's at 10. You should probably be there. Why? Because they're going to want to meet the guy they're betting $300 million on. The boardroom was everything Ethan had imagined, and worse. 12 people in expensive suits sitting around a table that probably cost more than his car, all of them looking at him like he was an interesting specimen under a microscope. This is Ethan Cole, Alyssa said, lead systems architect for Project Sentinel. He'll be directing the expansion if we move forward. A woman at the end of the table, Margaret Chen, board chair, studied him with sharp eyes. Mr. Cole, we've read your file. Unusual background. Yes, ma'am. No degree. 8 years outside the industry. And yet Ms. Carter assures us you're the best person for this role. Help me understand why. Ethan thought about hedging, about softening his answer. Ethan thought. Then he remembered Lily telling him to stop being a coward. Because I spent 8 years watching systems fail from the outside. I saw how engineers built things that looked good on paper but fell apart in practice. I saw the gap between what designers intended and what users actually needed, and I learned to think about that gap, to design for it instead of ignoring it. He met her eyes. The algorithm I built works because it's designed for messy reality, not clean theory. And if you want a system that saves lives instead of just impressive investors, you need someone who understands the difference. Silence. Then Margaret smiled. That's either arrogance or honesty. I can't decide which. Probably both, Ethan admitted. Good. I prefer people who know what they're worth. She looked at the rest of the board. Questions? An older man, Richard something, Ethan hadn't caught the last name, leaned forward. What happens if the expansion fails? If your system can't scale to the Pentagon's requirements? Then I'll have failed at something important, and I'll have to figure out why and do better. But sitting here worrying about failure won't prevent it. The only way to know if the system can scale is to try. And the risk is real. But so is the potential. We can play it safe and maintain what we have, or we can push forward and build something that actually matters. I know which one I'd regret more. Another board member asked about technical specifications. Another wanted to know about timeline. Ethan answered each question clearly, not hiding his inexperience but also not apologizing for it. After 45 minutes, Margaret called for a vote. All in favor of approving the Pentagon expansion with Mr. Cole as technical lead? 11 hands went up, 1 abstained. Motion carries. Mr. Cole, congratulations. Try not to bankrupt us. Margaret stood. Meeting adjourned. The board filed out. Alyssa stayed behind, grinning. You did great, she said. I was sweating through my shirt the entire time. They couldn't tell. You came across as confident and competent, which, for the record, you are. Ethan slumped in one of the expensive chairs. $300 million. I'm responsible for $300 million. You're responsible for building a system that works. The money is my problem. She checked her watch. Press conference at 2. You should probably be there. Press conference? Well, Pentagon wants to announce the expansion. You don't have to speak, but you should stand next to me looking professional and engineering-like. I don't know how to look engineering-like. Stand there and don't smile too much. You'll be fine. The press conference was held at a downtown hotel, in a room full of reporters and cameras and people who looked important. General Hawthorne spoke first, talking about innovation and national security. Then Alyssa, explaining the expansion and Titan Core's role. Then questions. Is it true the lead engineer used to be a janitor? Someone called out. Ethan's stomach dropped. Alyssa didn't hesitate. Ethan Cole brought a unique perspective to this project, precisely because of his unconventional background. He saw problems our traditionally trained engineers missed. That's the value of diverse experience. But he doesn't have a degree. He has 8 years of self-directed learning and a track record of results. In my view, that's more valuable than any degree. Some critics say hiring someone without proper credentials for a classified defense project is irresponsible. Some critics said the same thing when we hired women as engineers, or people without Ivy League backgrounds. Progress requires us to look beyond traditional markers of qualification and focus on actual capability. Alyssa's voice was steel. Mr. Cole has demonstrated his capability. That's what matters. More questions, more deflections. Ethan stood off to the side, trying to be invisible, until a reporter pointed directly at him. Mr. Cole, how does it feel to go from cleaning offices to leading a $300 million defense project? Everyone turned to look at him, cameras focused. Ethan felt his throat close. Then he thought about Lily, practicing her science fair presentation in front of the mirror, about how she never apologized for being smart, or knowing things other kids didn't, about how she just owned it. It feels like I'm finally doing what I was always capable of, Ethan said. I spent 8 years in a job that didn't challenge me because I didn't think I had another option. Then I got one chance to prove what I could do, and I took it. If that inspires other people who feel trapped in situations that don't fit them, then I'm glad. But mostly it just feels like work I should have been doing all along. Do you think credentials matter? I think they're useful markers, but they're not the whole story. Some of the smartest people I know never finish school. Some of the dumbest have PhDs. What matters is whether you can solve the problem in front of you. And you can solve this problem? I already did. Now I'm just scaling it. The reporter scribbled notes. Camera flashes went off, and Ethan realized with a strange mix of terror and exhilaration that he'd just become a public figure. After the conference, he escaped to his car and sat in the parking garage with his head on the steering wheel. His phone rang. Marcus. Dude, you're all over Twitter. Janitor becomes defense contractor. They're calling you the Goodwill Hunting of the tech world. That's ridiculous. That's publicity. Embrace it. You're famous now. But yet, I don't want to be famous. I want to do my job and go home to my daughter. Too late. You're inspiring. People love a good underdog story. Marcus paused. Also, Tom wants his suit back. You've had it for like 3 weeks. Tell him I'll return it tomorrow. Ethan drove to Lily's school, arriving early and sitting in the parking lot scrolling through news articles about himself. Some were positive, calling him innovative and impressive. Others were skeptical, questioning whether someone without credentials should be trusted with classified work. A few were outright hostile, suggesting he was a diversity hire or a publicity stunt. He closed the browser before he could read more. Lily got in the car, chattering about her day. Emily said she saw you on TV. Is that true? There was a press conference. I was there. What did you say? That I'm good at my job. Well, yeah, obviously. She buckled her seatbelt. Can we stop at the pet store? I need a new fish. The tank looks empty without Marie Curie. They went to the pet store. Lily picked out a blue betta fish she named Ada Lovelace after the first computer programmer. They set up the tank at home, Lily narrating the whole process like a nature documentary. That night, after homework and dinner and the bedtime routine, Lily looked up at him from her pillow. Dad, are people being mean to you about your job? Some people. Why? Emily's mom said some people think you shouldn't have gotten the job because you didn't go to the right schools. Ethan sat on the edge of her bed. That's true. Some people do think that. But you're good at the job, right? I think so. My code works. The system does what it's supposed to. Then those people are dumb. You don't need permission to be smart. Sometimes it feels like you do. Well, you don't. You just need to be smart and let people deal with it. She yawned. Night, Dad. Night, sweetheart. He went to his own room and pulled up his laptop. The security clearance had come through. The board had approved the expansion. The Pentagon was publicly backing the project. Everything was moving forward. So why did he still feel like he was waiting for someone to figure out he didn't belong? His phone buzzed. Text from Alyssa. You did great today. Stop reading the comments. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start building the future. Ethan put the phone down and tried to take her advice, but sleep didn't come easy. He lay awake thinking about the next 5 years, about leading a team, about testifying before Congress, about all the ways this could go wrong, and about all the ways it could go right. Somewhere in the dark, he made peace with the uncertainty. He'd spent 8 years playing it safe, and it had gotten him nowhere. Maybe it was time to take the risk. Maybe it was time to be the person Lily already thought he was. Tomorrow, he'd start building the future. Tonight, he'd just try to believe he was capable of it. The system ran flawlessly for 6 weeks. Ethan hired a team of 12 engineers, trained them on the architecture, and watched the algorithm expand to handle intelligence feeds from 17 different sources across 4 continents. The accuracy rate held at 97%. 0 crashes, 0 catastrophic failures. Everything was working, which was when Richard Kellerman decided to destroy it. Kellerman was Titan Corps' VP of Operations, a man in his 50s who'd been with the company since Alyssa's father ran it. He had silver hair, expensive watches, and the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. Ethan had met him twice, briefly, and both times had felt like he was being measured for a coffin. On a Wednesday morning in late October, Kellerman called an emergency board meeting. Alyssa found out about it 20 minutes before it started. "What's this about?" she asked, catching Kellerman in the hallway. "Concerns about Project Sentinel. Better to address them formally." He checked his watch. "See you in the boardroom." Alyssa pulled Ethan into her office. "Something's wrong. Kellerman doesn't call emergency meetings unless he's planning to gut someone." "You think it's about me?" "I think he's never liked that I hired you. He fought the board approval, called it reckless." She grabbed her laptop. "Come on. If he's going after the project, you need to be there to defend it." The boardroom was already full. Margaret Chen sat at the head of the table, looking annoyed. The other board members were checking phones, clearly pulled away from other commitments. Kellerman stood by the projection screen, a USB drive in his hand. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," he said. "I've discovered information about Project Sentinel that requires immediate board attention." He plugged in the drive. A document appeared on the screen. Ethan's stomach dropped when he recognized it. His Stanford transcript. Incomplete. Withdrawn after 3 semesters. "This is Ethan Cole's academic record," Kellerman said. "As you can see, he attended Stanford for 18 months before withdrawing. No degree, no completion of core requirements." He clicked to the next slide. "This is his employment history. 8 years at Apex Cleaning Services. 0 experience in defense contracting. 0 peer-reviewed publications. 0 verifiable expertise." "We know all this," Alyssa said. "It was part of his background check." "Oh, you know the facts, but do you understand the implications?" Kellerman pulled up another document, an email chain Ethan had never seen. "This is correspondence between Ms. Carter and Mr. Cole from 3 weeks ago. Note the use of the alias Nathan Cross. Ms. Carter knowingly hired Mr. Cole under a false identity and concealed his actual background from this board until after the Pentagon contract was signed." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Alyssa?" "I hired Ethan in an emergency situation. He proved himself before I disclosed his background. Everything was done within legal bounds." "Legal, perhaps? Ethical? Questionable." Kellerman clicked to another slide. This one showed news articles about Ethan, the janitor to engineer story that had spread through tech media. "This publicity has made Titan Corps a laughingstock in the defense community. Our competitors are questioning our judgment. Pentagon insiders are asking whether we're serious about national security or just running a publicity stunt." "The system works," Ethan said. "The accuracy rate speaks for itself." "The system works now. What happens when you hit a problem you can't solve? When the algorithm encounters scenarios outside your limited expertise?" Kellerman pulled up a technical report. "I had our external auditors review your code. They found numerous areas of concern: unorthodox architecture, non-standard protocols, workarounds that violate industry best practices. Those workarounds are why the system works better than standard approaches," Ethan said. "Or they're accidents waiting to happen." Time bombs in the code that will explode when least expected. Kellerman looked at the board. I propose we remove Mr. Cole from the project immediately. Bring in a qualified lead architect with actual credentials, someone the Pentagon will take seriously. Ethan has clearance, Alyssa said. He's been vetted by the CIA and approved by General Hawthorne personally. Clearance doesn't equal competence. We're betting $300 million on someone whose entire resume is mopping floors and coding in his spare time. That's not leadership. That's gambling. Margaret held up a hand. Let's hear from the technical team. Marcus Webb, you've worked directly with Mr. Cole. What's your assessment? Marcus was sitting near the back. He stood slowly. Ethan's approach is unconventional, yeah, but it's also brilliant. The architecture he designed is more efficient than anything I've seen from engineers with 20 years' experience. And the reason it works is precisely because he doesn't follow standard protocols. He thinks differently. Different doesn't mean better, Kellerman said. In this case, it does. The Pentagon's own test confirmed it. 97% accuracy. That's not luck. That's skill. Skill that could disappear the moment he encounters a problem outside his self-taught knowledge base. Kellerman turned to Ethan. Tell me, Mr. Cole, what happens when the system needs to integrate with legacy Pentagon infrastructure? When you need to interface with protocols you've never studied? When military brass ask technical questions you can't answer? Ethan felt the room watching him, felt the weight of $300 million and 12 employees and Alyssa's career resting on what he said next. I'll figure it out, he said. Same way I've figured out everything else. I'll read, I'll ask questions, I'll test until I understand. That's what learning looks like. That's what incompetence looks like. Real engineers don't figure it out on $300 million contracts. They know what they're doing from day one. No, they don't. They just pretend they do. Ethan stood up. Every engineer I've met spends half their time looking things up, asking colleagues, debugging problems they don't fully understand. The only difference between me and them is I'm honest about it. I don't know everything, but I know how to find answers. And I know how to build systems that work, based on 18 months of formal education and 8 years of cleaning offices. Based on 8 years of never stopping, never giving up, never accepting that I had to be what other people decided I was. Ethan's voice hardened. You want credentials? Fine. Credentials matter. They open doors, they signal expertise, they make people comfortable. But they're not the work. The work is the work. And my work is sitting on Pentagon servers right now, processing live intelligence, identifying threats that save lives. That's my credential. That's arrogance. That's fact. Kellerman smiled coldly. Here's another fact. I've spoken with 3 separate board members who agree that continuing with you as technical lead is an unacceptable risk. We're calling for a vote to remove you from the project. Silence. Alyssa looked at Margaret. Margaret looked at the other board members. Ethan could see the calculation in their eyes. The political risk versus the technical performance. The bad publicity versus the working system. Let's see the auditor's technical report, Margaret said. Kellerman pulled it up. 12 pages of concerns about code structure, documentation gaps, potential security vulnerabilities. It read like a hit piece, every critique framed in the worst possible light. Most of these concerns are theoretical, Marcus said. We've tested extensively. The system is stable. For now, Kellerman said, but stability isn't the same as reliability. And when this system fails, not if when, it won't just cost us money. It will cost lives. Can any of you honestly say you're comfortable with that responsibility resting on someone with Mr. Cole's background? The room shifted. Ethan could feel it. The doubt creeping in, the questions multiplying. Maybe Kellerman was right. Maybe hiring a janitor for a defense project was insane. Maybe the whole thing had been one long accident waiting to explode. His phone buzzed. Text from Lily. Good luck at your meeting, Dad. You got this. He looked at those 4 words and felt something settle in his chest. Lily believed in him, not because of credentials or degrees or anything external, just because she knew him, knew what he could do, knew he didn't quit. You're right, Ethan said. Everyone turned to look at him. I don't have the credentials you want. I don't have the pedigree or the resume or the years of institutional experience. And yeah, that's a risk. You're betting on someone unproven, someone who learned everything outside the traditional system, someone who might fail. He looked directly at Kellerman. But here's what I do have. I have 8 years of watching systems fail and figuring out why. I have a brain that won't let go of problems until they're solved. And I have something most credentialed engineers lost somewhere along the way. I still remember what it feels like to not know, to struggle, to build understanding from nothing. That makes me better at designing systems for users who aren't experts, better at anticipating failure modes, better at building things that work in the real world instead of just in theory. That's a nice speech, Kellerman said, but it doesn't address the fundamental issue. You're not qualified. Then fire me. Take the vote. Remove me from the project. Ethan's voice was steady. But before you do, ask the Pentagon if they want to lose the system I built. Ask General Hawthorne if he's comfortable going back to the old intelligence protocols that miss threats my algorithm catches. Ask the analysts using the system every day if they want to trade it for something designed by someone with better credentials and worse results. This isn't about what the Pentagon wants. It's about what's right for Titan Core. No. It's about you wanting to prove Alyssa made a mistake. It's about you being angry that someone without the right background succeeded where your preferred candidates failed. It's about ego. Ethan stepped forward. You didn't build this system. You didn't fix it when it was broken. You didn't spend 18 hours straight writing code because lives depended on it. I did. And if that's not qualification enough, then I don't know what is. Kellerman's face flushed. You're out of line. Probably, but I'm also right. Margaret stood up. Enough, both of you. She looked at Alyssa. This is your project, your hire, your call. What do you want to do? Alyssa didn't hesitate. I want Ethan to stay. He's the best person for this job, credentials be damned. And if the board disagrees, they can remove me instead. That's quite a stance, Margaret said. It's the only stance that makes sense. We hired Ethan because he could solve a problem no one else could solve. He's proven himself repeatedly. Removing him now would be choosing politics over performance. Alyssa met Margaret's eyes. I won't do that. If the board wants him gone, they'll have to fire us both. Margaret looked around the table. Anyone else want to weigh in? One of the board members, an older woman named Patricia something, raised her hand. I was skeptical when I first heard about Mr. Cole, but I've reviewed the performance metrics. The system works exactly as promised. Better, actually. And if our choice is between keeping someone who delivers results or replacing him with someone who has credentials but no track record on this specific project, I choose results. Another board member nodded. Agreed, the Pentagon is happy. The system performs. Why fix what isn't broken? Because it will break eventually, Kellerman said. And when it does, we'll fix it, Ethan interrupted. That's what engineering is. Build, test, fail, learn, improve. You don't avoid failure by hiring people with perfect resumes. You avoid it by hiring people who know how to respond when things go wrong. And I know how to respond. I've been doing it my entire life. Bossam. Kellerman looked at Margaret. If the board approves this, I want it on record that I opposed it. When this fails, I don't want any responsibility. Noted, Margaret said. All in favor of keeping Mr. Cole as technical lead on Project Sentinel? 8 hands went up, 3 stayed down, 1 abstained. Motion carries. Mr. Cole retains his position. Margaret looked at Kellerman. And Richard, if you call another emergency meeting without substantive cause, we're going to have a different conversation about your role here. Kellerman gathered his materials and left without another word. The other board members filed out, leaving Ethan and Alyssa alone in the conference room. That was insane, Ethan said. That was necessary. Kellerman's been looking for an excuse to undermine me since I became CEO. This was his shot. She sat down heavily. You handled it well, better than I expected. I was terrified. Didn't show. You sounded confident, certain. I was faking. Good. Keep faking until it becomes real. Ethan's phone rang. General Hawthorne. Mr. Cole, the general said. I just received a very interesting call from Director Walsh. Apparently there was some concern about your qualifications. Yes, sir. It's been addressed. Good, because I'll tell you what I told Walsh. I don't care if you learned to code in prison or from aliens or by staring at rocks until they taught you machine language. Your system works. It saves lives. That's all that matters to me. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Just keep doing what you're doing. And Mr. Cole, next time someone questions your qualifications, tell them to call me. I'll set them straight. He hung up. Ethan stared at his phone. The general has your back, Alyssa said. That's not nothing. It's everything. Without Pentagon support, the board would have caved. But they didn't. You're still here. We're still moving forward. She stood. Now, let's go build something so good that Kellerman chokes on his own doubts. They returned to the engineering floor. Marcus met them at the door. Heard you survived, he said. Barely. Want to grab lunch? Team's been worried. They went to a restaurant down the street, the whole engineering team cramming into a booth meant for 6. Sarah, Tom, Rachel, and 8 others Ethan had hired over the past 6 weeks. People who'd taken a chance on working for someone with his background. So, Tom said, Kellerman tried to fire you. Yep. And you're still here, apparently. Good, because we were prepared to walk if they removed you. Whole team agreed. Ethan looked around the table. You guys barely know me. We know the work, Sarah said. We know you're building something real, something that matters. That's enough. Rachel raised her water glass. To Ethan, the janitor who became an architect. I really wish people would stop calling me that, Ethan muttered. Too late. You're a meme now. Embrace it. They ate lunch and talked about the system, about upcoming challenges, about the integration with Pentagon infrastructure that Kellerman had mentioned. It was normal, comfortable, like Ethan had been doing this his entire life instead of just 6 weeks. When he left to pick up Lily, Marcus walked him to his car. You know what the best part of this whole thing is? Marcus said. What? Kellerman thought attacking your credentials would make you look weak, but all he did was prove that credentials don't mean much if you can't deliver. You delivered. That's what people will remember. Ethan drove to Willow Creek Elementary thinking about that, about how the narrative had shifted from janitor gets lucky to engineer proves himself despite obstacles, about how the story people told mattered almost as much as the facts themselves. Lily got in the car with her coral reef model, which had won first place at the science fair. Look! She held up a blue ribbon. Miss Chen said it was the most scientifically accurate project she'd ever seen from a 3rd grader. That's amazing, Lil. And I got to explain symbiotic relationships to the judges. They asked really hard questions, but I knew all the answers. She buckled her seatbelt. How was your day? Had a meeting where someone tried to get me fired. Did it work? No. Good. You're too good at your job to fire. She looked at her ribbon. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. Do you ever feel like you don't belong? Like everyone else knows things you don't and you're just pretending to understand? Ethan glanced at her. Where's this coming from? Emily said I use too many big words, that I sound like I'm showing off, but I'm not showing off. I just know things, and I like talking about them. Emily's jealous. Maybe. But what if she's right? What if I am showing off and I don't even know it? Ethan pulled into their apartment complex and parked, turned to face his daughter. Listen to me. You're 8 years old and you understand marine biology better than most high schoolers. You read books about ocean ecosystems for fun. You name your fish after scientists. That's not showing off. That's being who you are. And anyone who has a problem with it is dealing with their own insecurity, not yours. But what if people don't like me because I'm too smart? Then they're not your people. Find people who appreciate what you know instead of feeling threatened by it. He thought about his team, about Alyssa, about General Hawthorne. The right people won't ask you to be smaller. They'll make space for you to be exactly as big as you are. Lily considered this. Is that what your team does? Make space for you? Yeah, I think so. Then you have good people. I really do. They went upstairs. Lily did homework while Ethan made dinner. Later, after the bedtime routine, she called him back to her room. Dad, I'm proud of you. For what? For not quitting when people said you weren't good enough, for proving them wrong. I haven't proved anything yet. The system could still fail. Be yati what's. But you're trying. That's what matters. She pulled her blanket up. Ms. Chen says courage isn't about never being scared. It's about being scared and doing the thing anyway. You're courageous. Ethan's throat tightened. So are you, sweetheart. I know. I get it from you. He kissed her forehead and turned off the light, stood in the hallway listening to her breathe, thinking about courage and fear and the space between knowing you might fail and trying anyway. His phone buzzed. Email from the Pentagon. Subject: Integration timeline. Urgent. He opened it. They wanted the system fully integrated with their existing infrastructure within 3 months. Complete compatibility with 17 different legacy systems, some of them decades old. It was a nightmare of technical complexity that would require Ethan to learn protocols he'd never studied, interface with architectures he'd never seen, solve problems he wasn't sure he could solve. It was exactly what Kellerman had warned about. Ethan sat on the couch and stared at the email. 3 months. 17 systems. Skills he didn't have. He could do this. Probably. Maybe. Or he could fail spectacularly and prove Kellerman right. He thought about Lily's words. Courage isn't about never being scared. It's about being scared and doing the thing anyway. He opened his laptop and started researching Pentagon infrastructure protocols. Started building a learning plan. Started mapping out how he'd acquire the knowledge he needed to succeed. Because that's what he did. He learned, he adapted, he solved problems. And if he failed, at least he'd fail trying. 2 months later, on a cold December morning, Ethan stood in a Pentagon briefing room watching his system process intelligence from 17 different sources simultaneously. Legacy protocols integrated seamlessly with his modern architecture. Data flowing smoothly across systems that weren't designed to work together. General Hawthorne stood beside him, watching the screens. How long did this integration take? The general asked. 73 days, 12-hour workdays, a lot of coffee, and even more debugging. We estimated 6 months minimum. You cut it in half. Had good motivation. Also had 12 engineers working weekends to make it happen. Those engineers work for you? With me, not for me. Important difference. The general smiled. You're learning. Leadership isn't about authority. It's about building teams that want to succeed together. The system flagged 3 potential threats, all verified against existing intelligence. All accurate. It works, Hawthorne said. Better than anything we've had before. Better than anything your competitors proposed. He turned to Ethan. How does it feel knowing you built something that's going to be the backbone of military intelligence for the next decade? Terrifying, overwhelming, kind of amazing. That's the right answer. The day you stop being scared is the day you stop pushing yourself. Hawthorne held out his hand. Thank you, Mr. Cole, for proving that talent matters more than pedigree. For showing my people that unconventional thinking produces conventional results, and for having the guts to be exactly who you are instead of who people expected you to be. Ethan shook his hand. Thank you for giving me the chance, sir. I didn't give you anything. You earned it. Hiss. 3 weeks later, Ethan stood in Titan Corps' main conference room at a company celebration. The Pentagon contract was official, the integration was complete, and Titan Corps had just been named one of the top 10 defense contractors in the country. Alyssa stood at the front of the room, raising a glass. To Ethan Cole, she said, who saved this company by refusing to accept that his past defined his future, who showed all of us that credentials matter less than capability, and who built something so good that even his harshest critics had to admit they were wrong. The team cheered. Ethan stood awkwardly, not sure what to do with the attention. Kellerman was there, in the back of the room, watching with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. Not quite acceptance, but maybe something close to respect. After the celebration wound down, Ethan found him near the door. Kellerman. Cole. I know you didn't want me here, that you fought to have me removed. Look, I did. Still think it was the right call at the time. Kellerman paused. But you proved me wrong. The system works. Better than I expected. So I'll say this once. You earned your place here. Don't make me regret admitting that. He left. Ethan stood alone, watching the city lights through the windows, thinking about how strange it was that proving yourself meant convincing people to see what was always there. That evening, he picked up Lily from her friend's house. She got in the car with paint on her hands and stories about the art project they'd made. "How was the party?" she asked. "Good. People said nice things. Did they finally figure out you're amazing?" "Some of them, others are still skeptical. Their loss." She pulled out a drawing from her backpack. "I made this for you." "You're sorry. More shit." It was a picture of Ethan at a computer surrounded by code and stars. At the bottom, she'd written, "My dad, the engineer." "This is perfect," Ethan said quietly. "I know. I'm a good artist." She grinned. "Also, I got invited to Emily's birthday party again. She apologized for saying I used too many big words. Said she was jealous because I know stuff she doesn't." "How'd that feel?" "Good. Like maybe I don't have to be smaller to have friends." "You never did. They just needed time to catch up." They drove home, made dinner, did homework. The normal routine of a life that felt less fragile than it had 6 months ago. After Lily was asleep, Ethan sat at his kitchen table and looked at her drawing. My dad, the engineer. Not the janitor who got lucky. Not the guy without credentials. Just the engineer, just himself. He thought about the path that had brought him here. The tragedy that had derailed his education. The years of invisibility. The moment in a server room at 2 a.m. when he'd decided to stop hiding. The terrifying journey from there to here. Every step feeling like he might fall, but somehow never quite falling. And he realized something. The credentials hadn't mattered. The pedigree hadn't mattered. What mattered was the willingness to keep learning, to keep trying, to keep being honest about what he didn't know while refusing to accept that he couldn't figure it out. That was the lesson. Not that education didn't matter or that institutions were pointless, but that they weren't the only path. That capability could be built anywhere, by anyone, if they had the stubbornness to refuse to quit and the humility to admit they were still learning. His phone buzzed. Text from Alyssa. "Board approved your promotion to VP of Engineering. Congratulations, you've officially made it." Ethan stared at the message. VP of Engineering, him, the guy who'd cleaned these offices less than a year ago. He texted back, "Thank you for everything, for seeing what I could be before I saw it myself. You were always that person. I just gave you a chance to prove it." He put his phone down and walked to Lily's room, stood in the doorway watching her sleep, her fish tank glowing softly. Ada Lovelace swimming lazy circles through the water. This was what mattered, not the title or the salary or the recognition. This, coming home to his daughter, being the person she believed he was, showing her through his own life that limitations were mostly things other people tried to impose, and that refusing to accept them was the first step to transcending them. He'd spent 8 years being invisible, being safe, being less than he was because it hurt less than trying and failing. And then he'd tried, and failed in small ways, and succeeded in bigger ones, and learned that the trying was the point, not the outcome. That was the lesson he wanted Lily to learn. Not that she should ignore credentials or skip education or take unnecessary risks, but that when the world told her she wasn't enough, she should question whether the world was right or just comfortable with keeping her small. Ethan closed her door and went to his own room, sat on his bed and thought about tomorrow, about the team he'd lead, the systems he'd build, the problems he'd solve, about the continued journey of proving not that he belonged, but that belonging was something he defined for himself. Somewhere in the city, Titan Core servers hummed with his code. Systems processing intelligence, flagging threats, saving lives. Built by someone without the right credentials or the right background or the right path. Built by someone who'd refused to accept that his circumstances defined his capability. And that, Ethan thought as he finally drifted toward sleep, was worth more than any degree ever printed.